Divine peace and blessings. Today I want to talk about what they don't talk about as it relates to readings and divination. Obviously, I am a professional expert reader, diviner. So this is not an anti-divination, anti-reading video per se. But I do think that there has been some manipulation, if you will, in terms of the protocols of divination, what divination really is, how people are able to access divination, divinatory gifts and skills, and the precautions for both the reader and the persons who seek spiritual services in terms of readings, prophecy, and divination. The first is that all forms of divination are based on a system. Whether this is a religious system or a spiritual system, there are some protocols in place as it relates to that tool. Another code word is tool. You will hear the I am a no tool reader, um, which may mean that they don't use cards or I Ching coins or shells or any physical divinatory tool. But I think there's also a play on it suggesting that there's no tie, no commitment to a system and thereby any rules. I think it's also important to note that when using any form of divinatory system, you are accessing the spirit realm, and thereby you are opening a gateway, a portal, a doorway, if you will, to spirit and spirit entities. We have maligned, rightly or wrongly, the Ouija board for that in particular. Uh, the movies, Hollywood, books have fun with the Ouija board, and we have sort of bought in wholesale to the belief, or at least the thought, that there might be something evil about the Ouija board. But there again is a attempt to separate that warning, that restriction, that caution with other forms of divination for both the client and the practitioner. Now I'm going to start with traditional African-based systems and then sort of work my way out. And this is not going to be a popular video for many reasons. One, some people are getting over on you in terms of reading and slash spiritual work. And I say that in particular because the two are not the same. The two are very loosely connected, really. Divination is utilized in ritual work to build a formula, to build a blueprint, to see what we're dealing with, to see what spirits we're dealing with, to divine what necessary product may be required to bring evo, to bring healing, to bring balance to whatever the request is. But there's also a plethora of spirit entities, spirit deities, Orisha, Loa, spirit guides, ancestors that are directly connected to the tools of divination themselves, but also to the divinatory process. So when you see a reading online, in public, on Keen or Cassandra, or operating from their own Facebook even, and they appear to be doing dozens of readings a day. And again, I'm starting first with the African-based systems. There are too many protocols involved, too many prayers, praise names, ritual acts, if you will, to not be too specific, to not break anyone's taboo about sharing sacred knowledge. But there are too many processes involved before, after, and during to complete dozens of divinations a day, particularly in Ifa, Voodoo, any of those Santeria, Lakomi, Palo, any of those African-based even those created on this side of the Atlantic, but are steeped in African tradition, there's no way to do that. Um, I'm learning that many of you do not realize that a reading has to be closed. And that's often not done instantaneously. That's often not done on the same day. Um, Certain things are prescribed, certain ritual acts must be performed, and then we question the spirits, we question the divinatory source as to if we can close the divination. That requires time. Another area I think that is being shaded, if not deliberately manipulated, is the work associated with divination within African-based systems. It is not whereby you come in for a consultation and we, address your issue and then you move on and then we sort of sit back and wait for the next reading. Again, every time we interact with spirit, there is a requirement, there's a formula, there is a coding, if you will, that has to be looked at, interpreted, and then responded to, if you will. When spirit speaks, we listen, we digest what's being said, we interpret, and then we have to act and respond, even ourselves. And in some of these signs, they're very hot, they're very volatile, which require the reader, the practitioner themselves, doing a great deal of work. Some can be done in 20, 30 minutes, some take an hour, some take a few days. Uh, we have to look at where you are located. Some of us have to travel to salt water, some of us have to travel to fresh water, some have to travel to the woods. Many people are operating in the city online. And as a practitioner and as a client, you have to consider that. Now, I'm talking about traditional African systems now. You have to consider that when you're working with these spirits, when you're working with these formulas, when you're working with these Odus, when you're working with these hot, sometimes, and volatile spirits. So that all must be considered. So it's not just, I've gone from Babalawo to Babalawo and reader to reader, and this hasn't happened and that hasn't happened. We also have to look at what is your understanding and what is your role in the process. Many are looking for a codependent relationship with their readers, and that has never existed in ancient times or in modern times. It's inappropriate. Um, Often the reader, the diviner, even symbolically, even in your nursery rhymes and your children's tales, sits at the far end of the road, sits off in the wood, sits in a symbolic place of isolation from everyday activity. We have new protocols based on our new technology, based on our new tools, the internet, smartphones, and all these new ways of connecting with spirit practitioner. But the protocols, the rules, the universal laws don't change. And as we now move out into other world cultures, world traditions, tools, systems, tarot card, I Ching, runes, all of these forms of divination have regulations, have protocols that must be followed, have protocols that must be adhered to. Once you open a door has to be closed. Once you turn off a light, that response has to be acknowledged, particularly when you turn on a light in a dark place. So we have to look at not only our understanding of what reading and divination is, but also our attitude towards it as both practitioners and those who seek the services of. And you have to begin to look at patterns of occurrence. I've done videos before about first a client, and then a month later they want to be my student, my godchild, and then a month later they're online claiming to be a professional reader. And then a month later, you know, because I don't know why it is you all share all your business on Facebook. Their lives are in chaos. And now they're off seeking the next reader to assist them in getting their stuff together. Uh, that's a personal pet peeve of mine. If you are in a system, particularly the West African-based, Pan-African-based systems, there are people in place. We have godparents, we have elders, we have leaders, we have experts in particular areas of our art, of our science, of our religious and spiritual practice that are already in place for you to ask questions, for you to seek information, for you to get clear understanding. So when I see that the practitioner within a system seeking assistance outside their system, outside their community, outside their family, it always sends up a red flag. And it's popular, particularly here in the West, to, well, the Babalawos did me bad, the Ilays did me bad, you know, the Cubans did me bad. You know, we have somebody that we blame, and we don't take responsibility. And I'm often put off by it because I do too many videos about it. I've done 5.5 years of blog talk radio shows about it. My attitude and my reputation precedes me as a practitioner, as having sort of a tough shell. Um, I'm sympathetic, I'm empathetic, I'm compassionate, uh, but it's not first nature for me. I'm a logical thinking, uh, left brain person. I'm mathematical, I'm scientific, even for an artist, even for a musician, even for a performer, even for an actor. We assume those people to be always right brain, but I'm left brain. I'm not a whole lot, just a little past the middle, but I'm left brain, so I am going to apply some logic. There's logic to written material. There's logic to emails and communicating by email, and not being able to shift words around. It's very easy for misunderstandings when we're sort of having this verbal communication. You know, some of you are going to interpret this video in your own way where you are, as opposed to me sending you a detailed document about something and then you sort of trying to overlay your interpretation on it, and then say, well, I was misled. So we've got to really begin to go back. And this is not about fear. The church, the evangelical, the Islamists, even the Rastas, say it's all about fear. And this is not about fear. Fear um, actually came through in last night's Odu for my Ifa reading of the day. Um, Give me just a second to pull that up again. But that came through last night, the naturalness of fear. We, again, in modern times in the West, you know, we attach all this negative stuff to fear. So we're sort of on this anti-fear campaign, and, you know, just it's either love or fear, and just remove the fear. But without fear, kids don't learn how to ride a bike. They don't learn that fire burns. They don't learn that you acknowledge and you honor mommy and daddy, or there could be consequences. Fear reminds us of consequences. When we look at nature, the fawn and the deer, and they all have a natural sense of guardedness. They know that there's danger out there. They know that there's things that they need to be aware of in their normal course of life, and it is a part of the natural cycle of things. Oyeko Oshe, Yeku She, Oyeko Shi. There's many names for this reading. Um, but primarily it's about fear and fear's various natural manifestations in our daily existence. Um, so we have to be concerned about those of us who appear to operate in these systems without any fear, without any sense of consequence, um, without any sense of I can pretty much do what I want and say what I want. I am the king of my domain. I am the God of my universe, and that there be no repercussion for that. Even a divine, all blessed, all seeing God or goddess does not violate their own laws. So we have to be careful about ego and bringing that, and in all of its manifestations, bringing that into the realm of spirit. Divinations, reading, like counseling, like advising, like therapy, like 12 step, all of that is a very personal experience. And people will often come into these systems sick and then replace one addiction, one addictive personality or behavior, one codependent behavior, one enabling behavior, and then temporarily replace that with the system, with 12 step. Someone may put down their drugs and alcohol, and then the 12 step meeting, 90 and 90 days, becomes their next addiction. There is a healthy benefit to that early on. You want to replace the negative with something positive, even if it's addictive at first. But you got to get away from. Um, you want to stop smoking, so you get the patch. The commercial tells you the patch is nothing but nicotine, and there's nicotine you're attempting to get away from. But it first brings about a psychological change. You go from cigarette to a different item, a different look. So that's the first change in your mind. You learn not to associate it with the past. You begin to replace the past behaviors with something new. And then you slowly then should stop using the patch or stop using the gum or not be dependent on the 12 step to keep you sober. But you should be gaining tools, skills along the way to keep yourself sober, to keep yourself out of bad relationships, to keep yourself from going back to bad habits, to keep yourself from going back to your old lifestyle. And reading and divination should be that same thing. You gain information, you gain knowledge, you gain awareness that then helps you to make better decisions, clearer decisions, and assist you in moving forward without having to repeat that event, repeat that lesson, repeat that step. And we have many excuses for why we don't learn the lesson, and often we point outside of ourselves, and then we move on to the next spot, the next location, the next reader, the next doctor, the next practitioner, the next 12-step group, the next drug, the next thing, before we ever authentically decide to embrace the realness authentically of what it is that we're trying to do, that we're trying to fix, that we're trying to repair, that we're trying to improve. Um, I'm using many adjectives because this could be any type of reading, whether it's your loving relationships, whether it's your finances, whether it's why things aren't moving forward. Often, along our journey of knowledge, we come across the same information more than once. But at some point, when we're ready, when we're at that place of wanting to know, a light goes off and it means something different to us. And the sun comes out and we hear birds and singing and we get a completely different feel. But we forget that mama told you that 10 years ago. We forget that a reader told you 20 years ago you needed to address this. But we find the shortcut. I've done many videos, many blog talk radio shows about the shortcut, particularly here in the West. We, we love the shortcut. We don't want to do the work. We don't want to put in any effort. We don't want to commit to sweat, blood, tears. There's a saying here in New Orleans in Migrant Indian culture. Many people want to be a pretty Indian, but nobody wants to sew. Nobody wants to put in that work. And I'm going to risk saying many Indians don't want to put in that work, but we do because we love the culture. There are many days that I'm sitting here and I'm pulling that needle, and I'd much rather be doing something else. And I know that I'm up against a clock. I know that I'm preparing for a annual tradition that requires a lot of hours of labor. And so I push through. And your personal life, your spiritual life, whatever you're seeking a reader for, should have that same level of sincerity, gravity, and importance. It's not a joke to me. It's not a pastime to me. It's not a hobby to me. I have a lot on my plate in terms of scheduling, in terms of time, um, to do readings. I could easily just not do readings at all. But the importance of the reading to the practice is critical. But I'm not about to waste it. Um, some of you just want someone to talk to, and that's fine. And you should be honest about that, and get that where you need to get that. Whether it's through a paid advisor or whether it's at a group session or group therapy or through your community or build a support system. Many of us, and I don't blame the internet, many of you try and blame the internet for our loss of social skills. I don't. I don't. You either have social skills or you don't. And you bring that to the table. You bring that to the internet. Uh, what I see on the internet is an exaggeration of who you really are every day. You're rude online. You're probably just as rude in real life. Um, so I don't blame the internet for our inability to learn how to make friends, to learn how to socialize, to learn how to build a relationship. And again, relationship doesn't mean love. You know, you have a relationship with your grocer, you have a relationship with your dentist, you have a relationship with your pastor, but you have to build that relationship. You don't walk up and say, "Hey, Reverend man, answer this question for me. What happened to peace and blessings? Good morning, good afternoon, hello, how are you today? You know, when you get a moment, can I get a word?" Many of you are driven by self, driven by flesh, driven by ego, driven by your needs only. And you use spirituality and religion just like you use drugs and alcohol, just like we use materialism, just like we use other crutches in our life to assist that along for you, or to mask your awareness of the reality of it. So the expert reader, the professional reader, the elder reader, um, 50 years or more in the business, legitimately, can spot often intention from the very first contact. I know from the instant message, I know from the email, immediately, often, where this is going to go. I've said, I've posted, I've written, send me an email a million times. So I know when someone is trying to immediately evade that by sending me an instant message. And you start off like we're buddies, like we're friends, you know, like you care. And it's immediately into what can I get? And you can get everything, but it's going to be fair, it's going to be equal. I'm going to stick to protocol, my own and those protocols of the tradition and the system in which I operate in. Many of you are claiming too many systems, are masquerading too many systems. And it's hard to keep up all that information legitimately in your head. Not to mention trying to perpetrate like you have it, but to legitimately be a part of many of the systems that some of you are claiming. And then you lack some of the most basic protocols to that system. If I have one more Babalawo or Ian Nipa ask me what Ashe is, I'm going to pull my hair out. I mean, it's a travesty to use a soft word. Um, it's offensive, quite frankly. All the people who are claiming systems, claiming traditions, and you haven't read 2 books on that system. Not to mention spend any time talking to anyone, building relationship with anyone. And I know that's not easy to build relationship. It's not supposed to be. It's not designed to be. Otherwise, we'd waste a lot of time. If I spend as much time chatting on Facebook as some of you assume that I do, there's no way I would be in every episode of NCIS. When do we film that? We're on set sometimes 13, 14, 16 hours in a day. So I'm not sitting at the computer just waiting to suck your money and do a reading. There's no way I'm doing ceremony, that I'm doing a ritual that you see posted in both picture and video if I were just sitting here playing Candy Crush, pretending to be a psychic, pretending to be a reader. This is my life. And I can't say it enough. New Orleans is easy to find. We're on the map. Please come. Please schedule an appointment. Please meet me in Congo Square. Please meet me at the tomb of Marie Laveau. You know, I want you to see the authentic thing. I want you to know that, all the excuses about why we can't be true to our traditions, even in this environment, none of those excuses hold any water with me. I'm a living example of how we can all be true to our past, be true to who we are, and have a regular life, and have a job, and be true to it. There's no reason for perpetration now in 2014, 2015. There's no reason. If you don't like the system, get out of it. Get out of it. Do something else. Do something different. But you're going to have to gain the skills to do that, or polish the skills you already have to do that, or retranslate the skills that you have here into something over here in order to do that. And then just be pure and honest about it. But there aren't any shortcuts. There aren't any shortcuts. And readings and divination certainly aren't a shortcut. There's a lot of work involved with that. It's not an easy way to an end. It helps us to gain clarity. It helps us to gain understanding. It helps us to gain connection with spirit, rejuvenation, anointing, power, energy. But at the end of the day, we still have to do the work. Respect the voodoo. All is a blessing. Ashe.